fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Tell her the truth about the hotel keys or not. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. Funny story I want to share with you that involved my ego and a hotel room and my wife and some keys, some missing keys, some found keys, and the Bahamas. So we got an invitation to go down to the Bahamas a couple weeks ago, and it was one of those where you go over via boat, which is really cool. Done it a few times in the past and always great, and always even better when you have friends who have 42-foot boats. So we went over, and they're beautiful, invincible. It's a 42-foot center console for those of you that aren't into boating, and just a perfect day. We left from Fort Pierce. Not Fort Myers, that would have taken forever. We left from Fort Pierce and went over to the West End, which is really the closest place you can go. So it's less than 3 hours, which is pretty nice. And all of a sudden, boom, you're there and you're enjoying the Bahamas. And we're staying at a little resort that had, essentially hotel rooms, and had just absolute amazing, first day. And with the hotel room comes some hotel keys, and we had 2 of them. And if you don't know my wife, because I know a lot of you probably don't, she is crazy, wicked smart in terms of book smarts. She's, a medical doctor, and just can read stuff and memorize stuff and knows every little part of the body and how it all interacts with every type of drug you can imagine. I mean, she's just next level smart when it comes to stuff like that. However, she has a tendency to lose things, as in, I don't know if it's every day, but let's just say every other day at least. I have to call her phone because she has misplaced it, lost it. It might be outside. We found her keys out in the middle of the grass. We found phones all over the place, places that she can't even remember why it was even there in the first place. I always kind of kid around, my wife might lose her arms if they weren't attached to her, just constantly lose. Lost her wedding rings here recently. Thankfully ended up finding them in her scrubs, the next day. But that obviously had quite a panic amongst the household. So anyhow, just constantly losing things just to kind of set the stage. So first day of the Bahamas, as I went great, went out to dinner, caught some fish, just had an absolute blast. And we go to bed, somewhat early. And the next day we're scurrying out because we're leaving super early to go fishing and doing some lobstering, and can't find one of the 2 hotel keys. And they're in the Bahamas. This is not like America, where it's easy, or you can just call someone real quick and all of a sudden they show up with a new key. Like, hey, this is island time, man. And this place is very, very interesting. And the fact that it's tough to find anyone for anything. Even the whole check-in process, it was just me. I was the only person there. Friends already checked in. I was helping my buddy with the boat, and I go to check in. It's just me. Right, that should have taken a second, and it felt like all afternoon just to even check in. I already paid for the thing. I already prepaid it. It should have been the easiest check-in process ever. And they're back there just, anyhow. So next morning, as I said, we're rushing out, and there is only 1 hotel key that we can find. The other one is lost. And even my wife immediately, is feeling guilt. She's like, oh gosh, I lost it, because this is something that she normally does, is lose the hotel keys. And so I'm harassing her and giving her a hard time. And we go out, get to the boat. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just hold on to mine and I'll keep it safe. And at some point we'll get a break, and try to get a second one. And so we go out and tell our friends. They're all kind of laughing and in a nice way at my wife, Lauren. And that was kind of it. And so the next day we get back, and it's too late to go get another key. because we were out on the boat all day long. And so now we're stuck with another key. And I'm like, oh, sure would be nice to have a second key. And so it's just kind of like an ongoing joke throughout the 4 nights that we were there. So we're every single day we're stuck with this one key after that very first day, and I'm just harassing her the entire time. And at one point, we were at the pool and she wanted to go back to go to the bathroom, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had to go get out of the pool myself, go find my key. Anyhow, it's just ongoing joke. And so the last day we are packing up. And, if you ever been in a beachy type of place, like the Bahamas, let's just say, where you're out there just swimming, we were obviously lobstering and just out in the water constantly, we would take some of our wet clothes and hang them up. And I had my original board shorts from the first day still hanging up there. And I went to grab them to, pack them up. We're leaving. This is the final day. And you could probably imagine what happened is I felt something in the back pocket of those shorts. And it felt similar to a room key. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, the room. And my wife is not in the bathroom. So it's just me. She's in the main room, packing her bag. And so I'm at this point, this situation, right? This decision tree point where there's one of 3 things I can do. One is I can just ignore it, right? And act like it didn't happen, trash it. And it was never my fault, right? Because clearly if you haven't caught on, it was my fault. I had put them in my shorts day 1, and the key that we've been using this whole time was hers. I was the one who lost the other room key. So option number 1, I could have just ignored it. I another option, I guess I could have just taken it out and said, oh, wow, look, I miraculously found it here while we were cleaning up. And then of course the question would be, where was it? And, do I lie and say, oh, it was in yours. It was found underneath your stuff, or it was over here in your area of the bathroom. And then the third one was just tell her the truth and own it and absolutely crush my ego. Now, normally I might have just ignored it and thrown it away and act like the whole thing, just so she couldn't harass me for forever about something that I had been giving her a hard time about, really for the entire trip. But what's cool with this whole coaching program that I've been going through, we talk a lot about the ego, right, and pride and proving and hiding, and it's amazing how much proving and hiding that we do in any given day. And usually it's because, we're insecure. In this case, I was insecure. That I'm gonna look bad. How's this gonna make me look, right? Or is my wife gonna make fun of me? Is all our friends gonna make fun of me and now harass me? It's a little bit of an insecurity about the ego, right? And how we feel inside. And it's wild. The more and more I've gone through this coaching, the more I see it myself. I see it in others who are proving and hiding to get away from an insecurity. And proving, means like boasting, your chest. And, for instance, if you would had done something dumb, proving would be like, oh, well, yeah, you remember the time you did this? Or do you remember the time that I did this and I was great and magnificent and wonderful? And think about that. How many times have you done that where all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit insecure? Maybe someone is jabbing you and poking you. Maybe someone is making you just feel a little bit small, and you kind of, get the shoulders or Andrew do it through anger and talk about something that you did or something stupid they did, just to try to make yourself feel better. And then, with hiding, obviously it's kind of the opposite. It's more avoiding. And in this case, hiding for me would have been just trashing the hotel key and making sure she never found it and acting like it never happened. And it's wild how much we spend our time proving and hiding when we're insecure. And by the way, I'm going to have this coach Chris on here in the very near future on the podcast. Let's talk about all the amazing things that he does. Wow. I mean, literally game changing. Even a couple of my employees have said, wow, like I feel like you just become like a better listener, a better leader. And it's pretty neat just after 8 weeks of doing this with him. And a lot of it is just having the really just the wherewithal to know when I am proving or hiding, because it is natural. You're always going to have fears that come up, that pop up. There's always going to be conflicts that pop up. And normally when there's conflict or some type of fear and insecurity, that's when we go to proving or hiding. And we're all wired a little bit differently, but we all do those two things in situations that could be tense or we're afraid of something. So back to the story at hand. Because of all this stuff I'm going through with this coaching program with this guy, Chris, I sat there and I thought about it. And it took me a while, I'm going to be honest, just because of that ego, right? It took me a while. I was like, man, it'd just be so easy. I never would have just blamed her. Like that was not a choice for me. So that part was already gone. Like I was not going to, lie to her and have a prop to say, oh, I found it in your bathing suit. So that part was off. So my two choices were don't say a word or just confess what happened and own it, and be a better man. And so I went with that, mostly because of this guy, Chris. And so I told her, I was like, Lauren, look what I found. And I think even I could just tell by her face, she was like, kind of, when someone knows it was them this whole time and she's kind of embarrassed to say, all right, where did you find it? And it was in my board charge. And oh my gosh, she had a really good time with that. I was regretting telling her the truth for a second. You gotta be kidding me. I can't wait to tell everyone else you've been harassing me this entire trip. Because it was like an ongoing joke, this whole trip about this room key. And oh my gosh, I took it and I just smiled and back to the proving or hiding. This is where many of us, including me, my gut reaction, my instant reaction was to prove and say, oh, in this case, it would have been, oh, well, do you remember how many times you've lost the key? Like literally every single place we've ever been, I could have just started listing them off and that would have made her feel worse, right? And me feel a little bit better, right? It's the same thing as what happens when people belittle others, make them feel smaller to make yourself feel bigger. But usually that's not a healthy relationship, and it doesn't really lead anywhere in a good way. And so I didn't. I just sat there and smiled, and I was like, I know, I can't believe it. I am such a knucklehead. And I apologized to her. I said, I am so sorry. And that makes relationships stronger, right? Instead of running and proving and hiding, it makes it so much better when you just face it on and know that it's not going to define who you are. And that was a big piece that I was personally missing, and I think the majority of Americans are missing in their lives, is they think little things like that, or even big things, are going to define who they are deep down. And that was the number one question. I've talked about this in the a podcast. On my first meeting with Chris, we spent really a whole hour just talking about who am I? Who is Joe Simons, right? Take away the company, take away my wife, take away the kids, take away all the stuff I have at the core inside. Who am I? What is my identity? And it gets pretty deep. And so we will talk about that here on a future episode. But so many of us, because we're acting out of an insecure identity, right? Because we're thinking that maybe we're someone else. And here's a great example. If, let's just say you're a mom or a dad and your whole identity is wrapped up in your kids. And let's just say you have one kid, just to make a really easy example. So your whole identity is wrapped up in this one child. And let's just say that child grows up, like they all do, and ends up becoming an absolute screw up, druggie, whatever it might be. And because your identity, if this is something that you struggle with, if your identity was completely wrapped up in this one human being, who is not you, by the way, and all of a sudden now they're a screw up and everyone's looking at them and saying, well, gosh, I can't believe what kind of parenting was that. And people become depressed. They even become suicidal, and they become not fun to be around, and end up getting, divorced because they're just not themselves. And it's incredibly sad. Or even worse, let's just say that child passed away somehow, right? And if that's your entire identity and it's taken from you, all of a sudden you're now reacting to everything in life through this proving or hiding because you're so insecure in that identity, because your identity was this child or was a job, right? If you lose that job you've had for 30 years, it was your identity, and all of a sudden it's taken away from you. Same with people who retire after being, a worker for 30, 40, 50 years. And all of a sudden they feel like their identity is gone and they become depressed, suicidal. Some even, the crazy amount of stories of people who have died just shortly after retiring. And it really, really, really nuts. I don't know. It was very deep stuff I'd never really gone through and talked about, but I'm starting to see so much more how this is so important. And not letting things from a hotel, that's obviously a pretty minor one, but it brought up this conversation that I wanted to share with you about this identity. Really, really, really powerful. And a lot of it goes back to God. So you might be wondering, all right, what does this have to do with Unchurched? Well, a lot of this does go back to God. If you go all the way back to the book of Luke, and there is a time there where Jesus is confronted by Satan after 40 days of being in the wilderness. And what does Satan do? He questions Jesus 3 times. And if you really read the passages, he's questioning him about his identity. He is literally trying to get Jesus to maybe second guess himself or doubt himself, right? To maybe run or prove or hide. And the identity was, hey, you're not really the Son of God. Right? That was really what Satan was trying to do. 3 different times he challenged Jesus about his identity. That was the most, right? That was the one time and the most powerful time that there's an interaction between Satan and Jesus in the entire Bible. And isn't it ironic? Of all the things Satan could have done to Jesus, he tries to threaten and make him question his identity. Really, really, really powerful when you start thinking about it that way. And so that's why I believe this is so important. It's why so many fights happen. It's why so many people do get divorced. It's why there is so much hate and a lot of confusion and depression and anxiety in this world, is so much boils down to people living and reacting and making decisions out of an insecure identity. So once again, we'll have Chris on here very soon to talk a whole lot more about it. I wanted to give you kind of a little teaser and how it interplayed into a real life story of mine. And good news is, as I said, I told her the truth and really ended up strengthening our relationship, that she now knows that I'm secure enough to tell her the truth. And she knows I could have just, buried the key as well. And we never would have had to talk about it again. But instead, I did what I normally might not have done, and it was all because I know I could do it in a secure identity, and it wasn't going to change who I am. I still know that I am loved, and I'm worthy, and that I'm a son of God. And whether that key was in my shorts or hers, it didn't really matter. It's something we could just laugh about and have fun with. But I'm telling you, just a year ago, I would have really, really struggled to do it, just because, just insecurities and stuff. And that wouldn't obviously have ruined my day, but it was easier for me just to throw that key away than confront it and just say, yeah, you know what, I screwed up. Let's all laugh at me for a little bit. Because most of us don't like to be laughed at, right? We don't like to be made fun of if we can prevent it. And I had a preventable way. No one ever would have known except for me. And instead, I did it. So thank you, Chris. I know you listen to some of these. If you're listening to this, I appreciate you big time. And for all of you, if you have questions on this, let me know. Or if you want any more reading or things to hear about this whole identity and how to use it best to your benefit, it really, really is fascinating. And it's not just about, being a better leader, it's just being a better person and a father, a mother, a husband, wife, etc. So hit me up, Joe at saltstrong.com. That's JOE at saltstrong.com. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.